I hope you're ready to be inspired today. What a fantastic conversation we're having right now with Lisa Guerrero, award-winning journalist, sportscaster, and author. Welcome to the KJ Today Show, your place for the positive vibes of pop culture, people to know, and pets. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, KJ. How are you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I am so excited to be talking to you because you have influenced and inspired me for many years as a kick-ass woman in broadcasting, in journalism. Thank you for taking the time to be with me.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Thank you so much.
Let's talk about the book because I am so excited to get into this, on a Monday morning to bring some inspiration to everybody that's tuned in here today. The book is called Warrior, My Path to Being Brave. And if you could, Lisa, start off by sharing how special this book is to you in particular with the relationship you have with your mother.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, thank you for starting off with that, KJ. So the reason I called my book Warrior, My Path to Being Brave, is that my last name, Guerrero, means warrior in Spanish. And when I was 8 years old, my mother, who was 29, was dying of lymphoma. But before she passed away, she pulled me aside and she said, Lisita, never forget that in Spanish, Guerrero means warrior. You were born to fight. And then she passed away. And at 8 years old, I didn't know what that meant. And so it took me decades to learn what it means to be courageous and what it means to be a warrior and what my heritage means, but more importantly, how all of us can lean into courage and find empathy for other people, which help us be more brave. So I wrote it in the hopes of course, sharing my story, but also encouraging other people, especially young women. I hope to encourage them to create boundaries for themselves, to see red flags when they have careers or relationships that they feel like, okay, they've got a gut feeling that something's wrong. So my book is both a cautionary tale, really, and a love letter to young women and to my younger self.
Well, and to have the courage to know how to show up for yourself, not to get super personal here, Lisa, but I also lost my mother to lymphoma, and my listeners, my followers, they were there with me through it all. And so, seeing what you do and knowing that sometimes no matter what our job is, no matter what we have to do, sometimes we have to compartmentalize that part of us that's hurting so much and still show up, but do it in a way that's authentic to ourselves.
I am so sorry to hear that about your mom, KJ. And I really understand because, in my book, I do talk about some very traumatic things that happened to me at work, and some things that were happening while I was doing live television, and some really shocking stories. I wanted to share them in the book because I know I'm not alone. I know other women that work have experienced trauma and obstacles. And I want you to know, and I want other women to know, that the more we talk about them, the more we share them with our friends and family and listeners and viewers, the better off we all are because we know we're not alone. And so, I really hope that, of course, I hope you read my book. And if you're listening right now and you read my book, I really want you to circle back to me. And I'm available, I'm everywhere on Twitter and Facebook. And I want you to let me know what you thought about the book and what you gleaned from it. It's important to have these conversations about strength in the workplace for women and men, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, and in talking about that, I mean, your career has taken you down so many different roads, but being a woman, not only in broadcasting, but sports broadcasting, that came along with challenges that you, from the outside looking in, seems like you just continued to meet and break through and go past to pursue your passion.
Thank you. Well, as you can imagine, in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of misogyny in sports broadcasting, right? And so I was typically the only woman covering sports on the teams that I covered, like the Dodgers and the Lakers, USC, UCLA, the Kings, Chargers. So I was usually one of very few women in those press boxes and locker rooms. So I was subject to a lot of misogyny and sexual harassment, and I write about it openly and I name names. And I think it's important, again, to have these honest conversations. But what it did for me was it really, taught me how to be, resilient, and taught me how to speak up for myself and to be brave and to lean into courage and to find my inner superhero and to push back, which serves me well now as an investigative reporter for Inside Edition. Had I not learned those tough, lessons, I don't think I would be as brave or as willing to chase after bad guys and put myself at risk for the sake of survivors and victims like I do today.
And I, in addition to this show, I do a podcast called The Kind of Nerdy Girls, and it's encouraging women who love Star Wars and Marvel and all those things to, show up and have those conversations like we're so used to, traditionally men doing. So I did want to speak to the fact that you do encourage people to find their inner superhero. What exactly does that mean to you?
So I believe that all bravery comes from empathy. And I'm talking about true bravery, not swagger, not this ostentatious kind of, I'm going to throw on my armor and grab a sword and go out and fight the dragon. I'm talking about real bravery, real courage. What happens is if you really have empathy for other people, you will then recognize that people are depending on you to stand up for them. Women have this innately as mothers, or even if we don't have mothers, we have this maternal instinct. So a lot of us lean into empathy naturally, which makes us, I think, really good journalists. But I think we can all learn from this notion of being empathetic and listening and reacting, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Then all of a sudden, when the time calls for it, we become superheroes in order to serve others, to stand up for ourselves and to serve others. That is true courage. That's real superhero action, right? Not this fake swagger that they teach, men or little boys. I think women really have this innate sense of being strong and caring for others and protecting other people. And so that's what I talk about in my book.
I love it. The book is called Warrior, My Path to Being Brave. And you also have a couple episodes of Secrets of Playboy on A&E coming up. Let's touch on that. What are we going to see there, Lisa?
So tonight, first of all, I hosted the final 2 episodes of Secrets of Playboy season 1 last year. That won a Critics' Choice Award. 18 million people watched. It was a huge hit on A&E. And we really focused on the dark side of Playboy, Hugh Hefner, the mansion, etc. This season, we are shifting the focus to the women. Why they made the decision that was usually very controversial at the time to pose for Playboy, what the experience was like, and then what the consequences were in their lives afterwards, in their careers, with their families. And so we really focus on the women this year. So the episodes I'm hosting, I get to host 3 of them, which start tonight. Women in sports, so professional athletes that chose to commodify their brands through Playboy and what happened to them. And then next week, back-to-back episodes, which are women in uniform, NYPD officer, and an Air Force drill sergeant that posed for Playboy, what happened to them. And then finally, standards of beauty and how standards of beauty have changed and why some people chose to pose for Playboy to shift that narrative, including a woman in a wheelchair, Ellen Stoll, who posed for Playboy at 21 in a wheelchair, and the first transgender woman to pose for Playboy, who, by the way, Hugh Hefner approved. That was his last playmate he approved, was a transgender woman. He knew she was transgender. And so that's really interesting exclamation point at the end of the season.
Thanks for joining us for another celebrity interview. Of course, the KJ Today Show isn't just about talking to celebs, it's about hanging out with you. Join us live on Wednesday nights for pop culture, people to know, and pets. The KJ Today Show on YouTube. Subscribe and watch live Wednesday nights at 7.